a lot of us that originally pledged looked at it like a space simulation, and that's all we care about. Like, it's people playing Microsoft Flight Sim. You think they're doing it because there's an end goal? No, dude, they just want to get from point A to B and, plan their flight routes. Like, a lot of us just want to do that.
Yeah.
We don't need the grind. We just want to do the space profession.
Well, welcome everybody who is listening in. We are doing the first inaugural episode of the Expedition Soul podcast. I am joined by two of my favorite Star Citizen players, Aitan, Liron, and Jumps. Say hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
So let's start with some backgrounds on your journey in Star Citizen. Aitan, when did you start backing the game? Why did you back the game, and what have you been kind of doing lately?
I want to say maybe around 2018. I don't even remember how it came up or who brought it up. They were just kind of telling us about like the space game that was in development and how it was pretty much only like this hangar module. And I'm like, that's kind of dumb. Like, what's the point of it? And they're like, well, no, it's not for the hangars. Like, we'll be able to fly around. I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. And then they showed me the trailer. I think it was a 2012 trailer for Squadron 42 where they had the Bengal carrier and everything. And I was just blown away. Like the fact that you could walk in first person and then physically climb into a fighter that was inside a carrier in space. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm sold. Right, like then and there, I was like, sign me up. Got the hangar module and everything, and then what was the rest of the question?
What have you been kind of doing lately, gameplay wise? Like,
oh yeah, so with that last patch that came out, with Pyro and the contested zones, I actually have been kind of getting into PvP a little bit. I've been getting into a little more of risky gameplay,
Pyro,
which is something it really does. Cause like I have really bad anxiety. So when I go into PvP situations, even if it's like a PvP game like Halo or Call of Duty, I just get super anxious. And if I see another player, I automatically assume they're better than me and could kill me. And any skill I have goes out the window. And that's very much the same for Star Citizen. Because like you see these people doing like these flying videos that are like super cool. And then you see like these FPS videos where people are like sneaking up behind people with knives. I'm like, well, that's me. That's me getting killed with a knife. Someone recorded. But like...
The guy who shoots first always has the advantage. Just remember that if you're in Pyro.
Yeah, no, and that's your gameplay. I'm the guy that gets shot first. And
exactly.
So like
it's just Pyro. It's the way it is. Like, unless
like,
they're a friend, they're an enemy. I hate to say it.
100%. No, I feel like Pyro really kind of got me into that like mindset. Like, yeah, no, I want to try risking PvP to earn rewards because it just feels better. The loot gameplay is better and the risk is there again.
I think it makes it way more exciting to have a little risk in the game, and just like, it's like, oh, I could lose these things versus like, running a run that is safe. So and then, I mean, Pyro, the lack of crime stat, I think is a big one, right? Because that's just so annoying. You don't want to work that off. You don't want to go to jail. Jail kind of sucks. I don't want to be digging rocks and making no profit. I want to dig rocks
and getting shanked for rocks. Come on.
Shanked for rocks or shanking people for rocks. So it seems like some people are converting into like, I don't want to be prey, so I'm going to be a predator out here, right? And it's just like bullets fly first, And then you talk to them when they're down, if you talk at all, Yeah.
Well, usually it's a series of obscenities yelled in your general direction if they knew your name. If not, then you just lay low. You don't say anything in chat and just, go on about your day. But I will say one of my favorite actually experiences in Pyro is when it first came out, I landed at, I think it was like a headhunter's outpost. I'm allied with them. And there were like 4 or 5 other players, and I know there were players, they were jumping, they were teabagging. Like when I came in, like they greeted me by jumping around and teabagging. And I did the same. And we all just started walking around, just exploring the place. And it was really cool because we knew how risky it was. We knew at any second, any one of us could pull out a gun, kill everyone, and no consequences. But it didn't happen until another player came in like a ship and started blowing everyone else's ship up. Now, mind you, I had a Carrack parked, so I was the most like beefy player there. So obviously they're blowing up all these other ships, but it was just such a cool scene where everyone's like running to their like their ships, and like you're seeing these like bullets just hit the ground and the missiles, and you're watching these ships explode, and like you could tell whose ship exploded because they would immediately start shooting at the plane like it was going to do anything. And I'm like, wow, that was just so cool. I barely made it out of there too. Like he got everyone on the ground, all their ships were down. And by the time I made it away in my Carrack, like most of it was red. It was really intense, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, those moments just don't happen as much as in Stanton as they do in Pyro. So I think that's been a big change and kind of fun to explore with. And I mean, this is what I felt like we weren't going to run. You know, there's a lot of content to do there, but I still feel right now I'm running up against the wall, and I know someone else is kind of feeling the similar way. Jumps, I'm sure you have a lot to say on that, but let's start with the first question that I just asked Aitan, right? Which is, you know, how did you get into Star Citizen? And what have you been doing lately?
Man, how did I get into it? I think it was back when I was playing Arma like religiously, and one of the guys there mentioned Star Citizen as a potential Arma killer, which we now know is probably never going to happen. Right. I mean, nothing's going to be an Arma killer. And you know, I just picked up a cheap ass package, and I kind of fell in love with the idea of like no loading screens, and that's really what hooked me. And then eventually, you know, people from that Arma group all joined in, and we basically separated and said we're just gonna start Expedition Soul, and that's where we've been.
This is what we're talking to the director of Expedition Soul, number one. Oh
guy. yeah, I'm one of them. Yeah, back when I had more sense and drugs hadn't fried my brain yet. And that's pretty much how I got started in it. But what I've been doing recently, oh shit, I know, playing 4.0 a little bit, enjoying that. Bringing out my more PvP side. Like I'm always the aggressor in most situations now, just because I don't want to deal with the what if, you know, like, oh, are they friendly? You know what? It's easier just to get rid of them and not have to deal with that. So that's what I've been doing.
I will say we have killed a lot of players when playing together because he's like, let's just launch a torpedo. And I'm like, fine.
Yeah, let's just fucking, you know, oh, look, it's a maybe problem over there on the horizon. Why don't we just deal with it now? And that's what we do.
Yeah, I remember there was like a guy rolled up in a Polaris, and we three were playing, and you know, you were in the ship, and Jumps is like, torpedoes. It immediately like starts torpedoing.
Not even like.
No, actually.
That's what I was talking about. The power creep of torpedoes, or not torpedoes, but the power creep of the Polaris. You know, if one person's in a Polaris, yeah, it's pretty toasty. But if two people are in a Polaris, like, dude, you know, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, like you have that power. Right. So it's ridiculous.
Press a button, waste $100,000, but you also kill whatever's in front of you.
See, now I'm curious if we can put like the QI in the back of the Polaris to like quantum damp things around you. You know what I mean? While it's in the hammer, or while it's in the and then you just God. I own this space.
Yeah, I love that idea. You know, we got to try that because we had talked about this before. But yeah, just like, because why couldn't you activate the quantum interdiction inside the Polaris in the safety of the Polaris hull?
Yeah, because it has a ridiculous range, dude. It's like 10 kilometers.
Yeah,
like every gun on the Polaris is almost within range of that ship.
And then the torpedoes are like what, almost 20-kilometer range?
Yeah, what are they going to do? Run away in a straight line? Okay, that's convenient.
Okay. And that's why
I will say, torpedoes only move at like 300, so it can be possible.
That's true. That's true.
Walk away from the torpedo. I mean,
walk away. Yeah.
You need like I think if we brought like a fighter out there, we had the Polaris and we had the QI just on in the hangar. I think like what are they going to do, right? If they try to run away, chase them down in the fighter, right? You know, or they walk into the Polaris and then we take their sweet loot. We destroy everything, kill everyone, and take the loot for ourselves. I mean,
yeah. See, that's just how you get around the PvP meta, is you just ignore it. You know?
Now, I will say, actually, speaking of PvP, piracy aspect, there was one time that me and Jumps had a really fun experience where we landed somewhere. Well, I say landed, I use the term loosely. Basically, we were traveling in the Polaris and it despawned. Mm-hmm. And we found another person's ship and we broke into it and we took it for a ride. We did like 6-7 missions, like ground missions back to back. And then the last mission we did returned us to the place and we just parked the dude's ship and left. And we never checked to see if anyone was like in the bedroom or any other part of his ship. We just like took it and left. And he could log on later and be like, oh, my ship's still here. You know, I'm so glad no one messed with it. It's like, no. So we took it out. You know, this ship has history with us now.
Oh, yeah. I peed all over that.
Oh boy!
But it was fun piracy. It was a form of it, but it wasn't exactly combat.
There was
man.
You could he's gonna get back into his Polaris. He's gonna open like the recreation room and just like a avalanche of bodies just like falls out. He's like, what happened here? Oh man, but yeah. I mean,
it happens.
There's that. I mean, there's the official way to do PvP, and then there's let's just think of a fun way to do it. And I think Pyro has done a great job of making people say, well, what if, right? Like, oh, what's stopping me from killing this guy loading up his Caterpillar? In Stanton, I'd be like, I don't want to get that crime stat. I don't want him to come back here. But if I kill him and I take his Detatrine, you know, what's really going to happen, right? At the end of the day. And then, you know, you take the ship or you do whatever you want. And that's sort of more interesting, which I think adds to a lot of the gameplay that you can kind of do in the Pyro system now, where Stanton, a lot of that was just restricted. So, you know, like the inner beast is coming out in a lot of players, I think, right now, of just like, you know, shoot first, ask questions later, take what you want, and so on and so forth. And, you know, that's a fun new way to approach the game. Now, I mean, of course, you know, serious PvPers have been doing that forever, right? They there's no consequence that really bothers them, right? Anything that gets sent after them, they don't care if they have a bounty on their head, they're going to kill it anyways, right? Sure. You know, they could dodge all the turrets. They don't really care about what's going to happen to their ship. But, you know, for the rest of us, it's like opening doors that were once like, you know, didn't even get considered at that moment.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was definitely a very lawful player until Pyro.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not like Jumps. Like, I don't just open up on other people. Granted, I have the luxury of having a Polaris, right? Like, not a lot of people mess with a Polaris because it's not worth the bullets or the time. And especially with the ramming update coming in, it's definitely not going to be worth it. So it's like, it's a luxury cruiser in Pyro. But if I were in anything smaller, like a heavy fighter, oh my God, I know
I'm just a product of my environment. Like, I'd rather do PvE and, you know, have a peaceful play session most of the time. Like, I just want to do passenger transport. That's it. That's my thing, man.
That's true.
Like, you leave me alone and I'm happy. But the moment you're like, all right, it's not in the game yet. Cool, Pyro's available. Like, I'm gonna be dirty. Like, I'm gonna get disgusting. I don't care what loot you have. Well, like, I will take it.
Then that aside, I think I've been learning how to do PvP, right? I want to be attacked, right? Like, I want something to happen now, right? It's not even just I want to be the one attacking. Like, I just like that there's that interaction level, right? Where it's like, okay, I have to watch out. You know, every situation I have to approach carefully, right? Like, if I land my ship, I know I'm vulnerable, right? And so I have to just know that. So having someone in the sky watching your back is always a good move, or something like that, right? Like, it makes you think about that on another level and brings that planning element that they always promised to the game a little bit, where it's like, okay, we're going into this, we're in Pyro, we're going to have to be careful here. Make sure you're stocked up on whatever fried rats and stuff like that as well, because we might be out there for a while.
Oh yeah.
But this isn't World of Warcraft 2 though. Like, people are like, in WoW, you know, somebody would bow to the other faction and like, all right, it's an honorable fight. Nobody's going to interrupt it. But like in this game, dude, it's you got to play dirty. Like, that's the only, like, you treat it like fucking real war here. Like, you act first, you overkill ideally, and you never give the opponent the advantage. Use everything you got in that first initial, well, not everything, but, you know, try to kill him as fast as you can, the easiest way possible.
I think it's so funny because, like, I have such like the polar opposite approach to combat situations in general. But when I play with you, it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, sure,
No, dude, destruction.
Like, no, it's just no questions. I just
fly with a sledgehammer. Like, that's the way you gotta act.
You don't want to have, you don't want to deal with people. Make sure all the people are dead. I mean, at that point, that's not gonna happen.
Dude, you cannot give them the advantage in any way. Like, the violence of action is your advantage.
I don't think anyone in PU doesn't do that though, right? I've never seen. I mean, sometimes like, okay, like I'm flying around in a Hornet and there's a Zeus. I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna worry about the Zeus. The Zeus is fine. Like that's gonna do nothing for me. He's just gonna be mad. I don't want to get in that situation. But if there's like a fight I can jump on, right, and ambush someone who's like engaged with someone else, I'm going in there, right? Like I'm gonna kill that guy. I'm gonna come out of that, and have both of those bodies at my feet. Even if it's not fair or honorable. If I want fair or honorable, that's why I practice in free flight, right? It's you flare off, you get into the fight, and you're always going to be in that 1v1 situation. In the PU, all those rules are null and void, and I think that's how it should be to some extent. Because even then, even though that's the case, there are still these moments of order in that chaos, right? Like there's people around the station. There's the, like you were doing, like, the crouching move, or like the, dip side to side and, flash your flashlight, right? Like all these things of like, okay, we're cool.
Jumps almost shot me because I didn't know how to wiggle.
I mean, that's lesson learned there.
He's like, I want to see you wiggle. And like, I was like tapping A and D to move left and right. And like, he takes out his gun. He's like, no, that's not what I said. I'm like, wait. Let's just give me a second.
Also, if you play,
but now you know how to wiggle.
I do know how to wiggle now.
You'll never forget.
You're
that
welcome.
One.
It's Q and E after you aim.
Q and E after you aim. Yes, this is important keys, as important as backspace in the communication game of Star Citizen.
I am actually curious on how like stealth fighters, when they actually update that, and how it's going to handle with the current meta of gameplay, because that's going to be even more disgusting.
So
because people are going to do what I do, but like on a stealthy scale.
But that's what so when I was in Pyro, I was just flying around Rune Station in the Polaris, and one of those stealth bombers, the Eclipse?
Eclipse.
Yeah. So he, like, one of them flew up to me, he started spinning, and I opened up my chat because I figured he was talking, and he was asking me to scan him and let me know how far I could see him. So at first he flew away. He was like, I could see him from like 4.9 kilometers out, and I told him, and he's like, okay. So then he flew back, and he's like, all right, now let me know. And it was like 1.8 kilometers out. I'm like, oh my, that's actually like a terrifying prospect.
Yeah.
That is a very fast, very low profile bomber torpedo, like a torpedo bomber. Yeah. It's like, I'm like, 1.8, you don't see that coming.
Yeah. And if you're sitting there at idle or even speed, like your flares aren't going to save you if those missiles go off. Like, you might get a couple, but
you gotta tip for all you listeners out there, you gotta add more flares. So if you're in a Gladius, you need at least 4 flares flaring off at one time. You can press Alt H, and that'll increase the number of flares you drop at once. For like a Hornet, you're gonna need like 8 or so. So the bigger the ship, the more flares you need, and that's how you can kind of flare off missiles. Problem is you waste those flares fast. And this is the Firebird's thing, right? The Firebird has so many missiles, and if they just keep firing them one at a time, you're going to run out of flares before they run out of missiles. And so either you're getting disgusting. Close to that.
And it's a stealth bomber too.
Yeah,
like it's crazy.
It's stealthy. It's in the corner. You never know where it's going to come from. If they know what they're doing, you're never going to catch them. But, the first move is, where's that missile coming from? Just dash that direction, right? Just like, and then ping, tab. Where are they? Where are they? Because
Aitan and I were doing that with the Firebird a couple of weeks back, wasn't it, Aitan? You were in the Polaris on the ground doing something, and I was in the Firebird just like picking off people that kept coming back. Here's a full complement of 6 missiles and they're gone. I'm like, oh, okay.
And it's something the game allows, it sucks for anyone who's not in the Firebird, but this is just something that CIG has put into the game. And I mean, when we're on the subject of balance, we might want to talk about 4.1. We got a few balance changes coming in. From what I hear, the Cutlass, more maneuverable, might be very dangerous, might be very scary now. And then, of course, the Connie getting extra turrets, the size 3s, replacing the size 2s. that could be a threat. And it has the PDCs if you've got the Emerald, So
is the Cutlass getting a weapon increase from size 2s to 3s, or is it just still size 2s?
I think it's still got the size 2s, but I mean, for a profile that small, 4 size 3s, 2 size 2s, that gunner is going to make a big difference. So that's
yeah, you'll need the gunner.
So
yeah.
I mean that if you're just doing an aim trade, right, that's 2 extra guns that your opponent probably doesn't have. So
yeah.
I mean, there's that. So that is coming to an interesting thing here, where they're balancing and they're trying to get some of the multi-crew ships up to that level of like the Gladius and the Hornet, and having these kind of kings that have been there forever be a little challenged, or at least like giving them some love, right? Like I don't think the Valkyrie is going to be now that it has more forward facing firepower is all of a sudden going to be a huge threat, but
no.
It needed that because it's just so behind the curve, right? I mean, it has less guns than the Hornet, and the Hornet is one guy controls all of those weapons, right? And he can dance around a Valkyrie. Like it's so silly kind of that those decisions are there. So I'm happy that we're kind of seeing these increases, but I don't think they're addressing the missile concerns, that is an interesting one, where I think people have been complaining about that one for a while, and I don't think we're getting any changes for that.
I got to be honest with you. I rarely use missiles, so I'm a little bit out of the loop. What concerns are going on right now?
Use them all the time. Use them while they're free.
Oh, okay.
While you can reclaim them, use them.
Oh, okay. Just the expense.
Yeah.
So
because they're going to cost money. Get your love out of them eventually, because they're not going to reclaim with your ships. So use your 28 torpedoes.
Okay. I mean, it's already like when we use like the torpedoes and the missiles to rearm Polaris is like $2.1 million right now.
Yeah, I mean, like the more flack you give them for like, oh yeah, allowing us to do this, eventually they will change it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to go through all of these changes now, especially. I mean, granted, yes, they do need changes because right now, based on the player base alone, a lot of people are either running solo or with like 2 people.
Yeah.
So they're kind of changing the meta based on that. But, these are multi-crew ships, and down the line, right, let's say when we get NPCs, you expect a lot of these multi-crew ships to be fully manned, whether by other players or by NPCs or by those, what are they called? The blades.
Yeah.
So with that, I feel like what's going to end up happening is they're actually probably going to end up rolling back to bring down the damage level of all ships again later on. And that's because when we see fully manned ships, they're not the same monster as a 1 to 2 crewed ship.
Yeah,
man.
It's like
everybody rocking around with a fully crewed Polaris. Like you won't be able to do anything.
I totally no, and I hear you. It's definitely gonna be a tricky thing for them to do because of the fact that we're not.
Well,
they're pretty much changing the stats for incomplete mechanics.
Well, let's be clear. The Polaris is the exception. Most multi-crew ships are terrible. Like compared to anything else, just god awful. Any other ship,
I would never want a multi-crew freelancer. No
right.
way.
Do I want
freelancer?
Do I want 3 people in a Connie, or do I want 2 Connies, or do I want 1 Connie and 2 fighters? Right? You're going to want the more ships more often, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't think that there's enough gameplay to support a lot of the multi-crew ships. I was actually having a conversation with Avenger 1 not long ago where he mentioned something similar, which is, the point of a multi-crew ship is it's not a numbers game, right? Because they could boost them to hell. They could all be the Polaris, right? And they're just wrecking ships and their shields are massive and no one can do anything. And, and the people in there feel really powerful. Or they could go the other direction, which is enabling more multi-crew options, right? Like, okay, let's have less gunners. Let's not have so many gunners in there, like 2 people controlling all the guns. We don't need 8 people in the hammerhead. We get 2 people, 1 on each side, and then they're doing the guns. And if you put more guns in there, you get more options because you can target more people. But that's the minimum. And then you want someone who's doing the engineering, right? And if you have a really great engineer, that should make a huge difference, right? And if you have a scanning officer who's like keeping an eye on the picture, and then a captain who's making these decisions based off of all this information and like the status of the ship and so on and so forth. Well, the power of that ship is no longer just how much damage can it output. It's the fact that it has this well-oiled machine, and tactically it has way more options than the goon swarm of, Hornets and Gladiuses, right? Because they don't have as much information. They don't have a picture. They're not organized, right? So the difference should be that like they can make these different choices, and therefore as a fleet with a greater crew, you should have this ability to have more impact than someone who's just coming in with a stream of fighters. But right now, all we have is Multicrew is someone can adjust the power, and they do that like once every few minutes, and people in turrets, right? Like that.
Yeah,
right. That's nothing. Like we need.
Yeah, so it's like you figure
that'd be amazing to have that. It really would be. But
you figure with all these
don't
mechanics
see it in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, when it does come in, it's like you figure these mechanics are also going to be debuffs as well as buffs. Like well-oiled machine, probably be able to survive longer than a base Polaris, but at the same time, improperly oiled machine, your Polaris is going to cascade fail because no one's managing. So
if you have different crews full of amateurs, like the fighters should have the edge, right? But if you have like some really good organization, and like you have the people in there, and you guys do your drills, you put your reps in, right? Like maybe you're not winning every fight, but you know which fights you can take at least, and you're like, let's get out of here, or like let's make this choice, or we'll go this direction because there's less threat this way, or but you have that more options to work with that makes that ship survive longer, and makes that more of a home.
But I think honestly, like for now, it's a good idea. I think for now, giving guns a little boost.
Yes,
they need to take a step back and think roles a bit more. Like they need, like honestly, just take a look at Barotrauma. Like give us roles similar to that. Well, like we got the security officer, we got the medic, we got the engineer. Like that's what I want. It doesn't have to be as in depth, but
it's
I want roles.
Yeah, it's the Sea of Thieves argument. It doesn't have to be something crazy. You're just putting planks on other planks.
Yeah,
but it's fun because it's happening actively, right? There's a fight happening and the ship is sinking and it's crazy, and you gotta patch all these holes, right? And you're contributing in that respect. So even if it is just the changing the fuse, or just looking at the scanning radar, if there's a lot going on, all those simple things add up to a fun experience.
Did you guys test the engineering in Free Flight a while back?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Was it everything you wanted it to be?
So fun actually.
Was it?
It seems, again, it's tier 0. Like there's definitely more they can do with it, and like not everything they showed in a lot of their trailers was in it, but it's a great start.
Well, was it everything Avenger 1 wanted?
I don't know if it's that. I think I mean, but it's certainly not at that level. But we were, when we were in it, it was cool because we were, it's like everyone's running around the ship. A guy in front of me got lasered by ballistics and he went down and he was like, my legs. I was like, oh shit, I got to put this fuse in. And it was cool. And I think part of that was because the ship wasn't blowing up, right? And it's like, okay, we have to board this ship now. And like it had all these elements to it that engineering added, because it's not just like, oh, shoot at that guy until he dies. It's like, okay, he shot this. We need to make sure that this is repaired. And if we do a better job at repairing that, then he's going to be at a disadvantage, right? And once we disable them, then you got to have a boarding action, right? They have a last stand and you have to be able to take them out. So it was like, it just added so much, just with some simple mechanics, it added so much depth to the game. Just by those decisions.
It made a normal fight seem more chaotic and like
could
more
computer
involved.
monitors control like the doors? Could those be disabled, or could what's the other, the doors, or was like
Not
the oxygen in the room and all that stuff?
We
like
didn't
is that
see
included?
That was not in there yet.
No.
That's a bummer.
Yeah,
they just had it was just the fuses, and they also had the ballistics that were able to go through walls. Once you disabled shields. Because I remember we did a test where one of our other members in the group, O'Neill, was on an enemy ship, and I was on the Gladius, and their shields were down, and he was in the main hallway, and I'm like, all right, I need you to like check something out for me. And he's like, what's up? And I'm like, look towards the cockpit. And as he was looking towards the cockpit, I started shooting like in a straight line, hoping to like gun, up the hallway. And he was watching as like another member of the crew started running away from my bullets, and he just turned and ran, and I killed the other guy there. And I mean, it really was so it was more immersive that way, because like there were rounds where we just blow each other up. And like, even if we disabled the ship, we just continued to ballistic through the hull until we won. Like, we just kill them that way. Sometimes we would board, but while we were trying to board, they'd like get the ship up and working and they'd like leave, but then we're out in space, so we'd have to go back. And, it really kind of made the decision like, hey, is it worth boarding, or should we maybe just keep damaging the ship a little more and leave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not in that game mode, but I guess in the broad like scheme of things, it's it's important.
It was very cool, and I'm glad we had that, but we're not seeing that yet, right? So let's like shift gears a little bit, right? Because we had this big announcement at the beginning of the year, right? Which was we're shifting towards a more gameplay focused model, right? Which to me, when I heard that, at first I was like, yes, we need the stability. We need all these features in, right? I want to see some voice actors and some missions and some depth to the game. And I don't want to fall through the planet every 2 seconds. That'd be great, But it did also make me think like engineering, all these features, charge and drain, right? All these things that we were thinking about getting, the quantum boosting, right, are not currently in production, right? Like they've fallen off the radar. So what do you think about that?
Talked about.
Yeah, they literally went radio silent on all of that. So it makes me think we're not going to see that for a while. Do you think we'll at least see something towards the end of the year?
It just, I don't know, man. It made me feel like, all right, they're saying the game is, I know they're saying like, oh, we're adding features, but what's the other thing where they're adding like new content, like new tools, whatever that is. It makes it sound like they're being, that complete, content complete. Like, all right, we got all the stuff in here already. So now we're just going to make gameplay with what we already have, which is a huge bummer to me, at least.
I mean, so here's what I think. I think that they want people to go, if they're thinking about Squadron. I don't think we're going to see 1.0 as it's listed, but I do think they're going to want the PTU to be solid so that when people come in to Squadron, then move to the PU, they're going to have a decent experience. I think that's part of the plan. The other part of the picture, which was very interesting, I was listening to a podcast, I wish I remember the name, but brought this up, which is, they were packaging it as this whole like, oh, we're listening to the player base and, we're making these decisions to stabilize the game. But really, at this moment, it is time for them to stabilize the game because they have to optimize Squadron 42 for release, right? And so, and these games are so connected, right, from a game engine perspective, that all the optimization that you're going to get for Star Citizen is going to come from Squadron, or at least we're going to get a lot of that. So I think a lot of what we're seeing here with this stability improvement and performance improvement is just coming by the nature of them developing Squadron as well. But they get to package it as this, oh, we're listening to the player base now. I think they wish they got more in before they made the switch. But I don't know if they were, that upset about having to make that change. But I think we're seeing a lot go by the wayside until Squadron comes out, just because of that very nature of that's their focus right now, is making Squadron optimized.
All right. I mean, that is, I guess, because like that's the hope, right? Is like when they finish Squadron 42, is that all that dev power, all the money that's going into the project is now completely focused on the multiplayer aspect. Because like, not a lot of people remember, it's like this used to be a single player project. The original project was Squadron 42. And eventually when it grew in scale, that's what more people backed was the multiplayer. But essentially it's like that project still started. And until that's done, there's a lot that we won't see because either they want to keep it a surprise or because they won't put like those locations into the multiplayer world until Squadron 42 is released. So it's like, realistically, assuming everything goes well, which, expect the best, prepare for the worst, whatever. But like, realistically, it's like we would assume that once Squadron 42 is done, then we're going to see a massive like change in the way like the multiplayer is going to be developed. Not just in the way like, because again, by that time, all the tech is going to be finished, assuming, right? but
Squadron
it's
42 was feature complete 18 months ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
so it's like once you bring like all those people there, whether they're like the writers or like, you know, like the I guess mission dudes or whatever else is going to fill our world, it's like
So when did we go from pre-alpha to alpha then? Because if they're adding story, gameplay, they're polishing the features that we already have instead of adding new ones, that kind of hints at that we're almost in a beta.
and it's strange because it's not really at all out of pre-alpha, is it? Because
No,
there's
dude,
still
like, it's
so
not.
many mechanics that are missing, like quanta. I think we were talking about that the other day
Where'd
with
that
like
go?
Tony.
Oh,
That's
dude,
gone.
we did
But
our
that's a
research,
whole-
man. Tony
yeah.
retired.
Yeah, no,
retired?
that is a
For real?
whole. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
He
did.
retired a month ago.
Oh my
But
goodness.
like
So,
think
yeah.
about this, right? Like that is a core gameplay feature that was supposed to control the dynamic economy, so that when there were NPC ships that were doing trades or players doing trades, it would stimulate different parts of the economy as to what was
Yeah.
getting crafted. And if the economy was so good, pirates would move in and that would change things. And it's like, that's kind of like a heavy pre-alpha prerequisite, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, or NPCs not even making it to 1.0. Like to me, that is a pre-alpha requirement that isn't really, you know, gonna make it into the 1.0, which is crazy to me. But like, again,
everybody had an expectation for 1.0 to have like their big feature. Like for you, it was AI. For me, it was passenger transport.
God.
And, you know, some people, it's probably the Javelin or the Kraken or, you know, other things like that. Or I want to open my own shop in 1.0. And they've been slowly taking away those major milestones that everybody's looking forward to. And now we have the bare bonesest 1.0 I've ever, like, nobody could have predicted this except for that hater guy like 9 months ago.
Well, you mean, I still trust what they said during CitizenCon. I think what's on the roadmap right now is just indicative of what features they are like currently focused on that are a part of 1.0. But I don't think that constitutes the entirety of 1.0. And I also don't like to think of Star Citizen as an alpha beta situation. As much as they use that language themselves and they've dug their own grave with this one, I don't think that really defines the process for the game. Right now, they need to focus on stability from a marketing perspective, from a got to get Squadron 42 perspective out. But that doesn't mean that they won't go back to a let's break some more stuff, right? It's just that they kind of have to divert some time to making this game a little more polished while they you know, because they don't really have a choice, right? But I hear you on the fear because it could be because we're pushing towards a polish, right? And you know, at any moment they could make a new decision, right? The target's always moving, so they could be like, okay, well, the money's not coming in anymore, right? The game isn't, you know, we're not gonna be able to get everything that we wanted in, right? The walls are closing in, and they might just, you know, put a bow on what they have and send it out there and then call that 1.0. And then, you know, many DLCs, many expansions later, maybe we get everything that was there, but you're not going to see that for a while. And that's disappointing, I think, for a lot of people.
I forgot his name, but the redhead ship designer guy did a Star Citizen live a while back. And it was like right after CitizenCon and John Crew and the 1.0 release to talking and all that crap. And people were asking about all this stuff like, hey, when's this going to come into the game? And a very common answer from him was after 1.0. And that's what the Genesis Starliner was asked. And he's like, after 1.0. And that to me was like a kick in the nuts. Like,
yeah, that's kind of,
dude,
that really kind of like bothers me. It's not like these aren't ships that I have or like gameplay I'm going to focus on, but it's something that's been bothering me because like for years he's been waiting for like a very simple gameplay mechanic. Well, okay, you know what? I'm gonna retract that. I don't fucking know anything about this game's designing. Don't ignore that. But anyways, but I remember seeing when they showed off Microtech, they showed NPCs walking onto the same ship as you were walking onto. You sat down, it flew you somewhere, everyone got off. And it's like, you know, Jumps has been waiting for literally a ship that its sole purpose is NPCs or players getting on the ship, paying for a ride, and he transports them.
Mind you, this was announced. This was announced in June of 2015.
Yeah.
This shit.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's kind of strange that like we're getting all these new releases for like tons of different ships, but like these ships and this mechanic isn't there, even though this ship was sold on this mechanic over like almost like 10 years ago.
I'm fairly positive it was the first announced Crusader ship. Yeah, it was the first announced Crusader ship too.
Yeah, it's
like
it was ships that they have ever collected.
Yeah, like it's like it's really bothersome that like things like that aren't gonna make it in 1.0.
Yeah, and the Endeavor is one of them as well.
Yeah, we're not. That's like their biggest challenge. Farming, science, like all that.
But they said, and that was the thing. Didn't they even say that base building was going to make it into 1.0? Like we would get it this year or something?
Oh, great. I'm glad I pledged for that.
Well, I'm going to be hiding in your walls and your vents when that comes out.
No, I think to me, the core of the game experience is base building, crafting, economy. Right. Like I think those three things, all the loops that kind of go in around that are important. But I think those three touch every aspect of this game. And by base building, I don't just mean base building. I also mean like, station building. Right. And sort of base building in any respect, wherever you're headquartered, your org, which is important.
Station building is supposed to be like super end game, while like base building anyone could do. Right.
Yeah.
Ideally. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, they
because I think they said it's like 1 to 3 hour session. You could build like a small homestead somewhere for a solo player, but like a space station, you're looking at like an org.
Yeah, they're going to have to be very, very, very careful with base building because this could just turn into a trolling nightmare. Because like if they added it the way it is to this current gameplay, like people would find a way and just wreck everything you have. Even
they'll probably do something like they do in Ark, where they just place random buildings but don't build on it to lock up territory.
Like that'll happen, man. Like people put pillars to block, mines and stuff. If they
don't put like safety rails in, that's gonna be rough. Like we're gonna have like a Rust situation, and I don't think
it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge they're gonna have to face when like opening a whole entire universe to like.
It's a bigger feature than just adding passenger transport or bounty hunting tier 2 or like any of these other things, like these other professions that we should probably have already had but don't. And yet they're doing this Mount Everest climb before they do these little feats.
And I hear, like, I think that it really sucks that we are not getting those kind of features that were promised. But the game there's no meaning, right? I don't care how many gameplay features they add. There is no meaning in the current game. And that doesn't make it a game that I can play for 10 years, right? That's why economy, base building, and crafting, I think, are so critical, because those three gameplays add meaning to the universe, right? Now you have a place where you have to go, right? You have something to work for. You have the best resources that you want to have. Economy connects everything so that you have player interaction through the economy and stuff like that. And I think passenger transport would be nice, but if we don't have those three things in by whatever they call 1.0, we're going to have like a No Man's Sky or like a Elite Dangerous, where there's just not a lot of reason to do anything that you're doing. And it's not going to be this, 20 or 30 year game that they want it to be, right? World of Warcraft length, organization based game, right? It's just not going to have that level of impact if those aren't in like that. So I understand why they're doing that.
If you look at it like an MMO, then yes. But a lot of us that originally pledged looked at it like a space simulation. Yeah. And that's like, if you look at Maverick, one of our other org mates, all he loves to do is mine, salvage, and transport. Like this game's made for him. He doesn't give a shit about anything else. All he ever does is do that to make more money, to buy more ships. Like that is his entire loop. And a lot of us that just want the simulation, that's all we care about. Like it's people playing Microsoft Flight Sim. You think they're doing it because there's an end goal? No, dude, they just want to get from point A to B and, plan their flight routes. Like a lot of us just want to do that. Yeah. We don't need the grind. We just want to do the space profession.
Okay, because I don't come from that, because I want to be immersed in the game, so I come from a completely different thing. But I want to have my immersion comes from being able to role play in like, this is what I'm doing right now, this is why I'm doing it, and this is how I'm contributing to the grander scale, right? Whereas that's not,
and that's totally fine. Star Citizen seemingly transitioning to that sort of a game. It's moving away from the simulation to more of an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
And also when they add things like personal rooms, you know, I think that'll also kind of give you that more I don't know, like that role play. Oh, yeah. This is my home. I worked for this. Oh, look, I put a vase here. I found this somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, like me and Jumps stole a vase from some people in Pyro. It was a really cool vase. We couldn't attach it to anything, but like, you know, I want to be able to start collecting things and like, I mean, I could put it on my ship or my hangar, but my hangar's not a room.
I didn't pledge for the Genesis Starliner to help me grind up to another one. I pledged just because I wanted to simulate being in the Genesis Starliner.
Sure, yeah. No, I think I love that you brought that up because that is new for me, right? Because that's not how I play games, right? So that's a perspective that I don't think that I didn't understand, and I don't think a lot of people who might be listening right now understand, right?
That's why people play like Hunter Call of the Wild, man. Like we just want to get in, relax, play a hunting game, you know,
or train simulator,
train simulator,
fishing simulator, any number of those, right? That's a completely different thing than it feels like the direction we're pushing. But the original backers of the game were people who were interested in just having like kind of a really cool.
Yeah, we were the sim guys. So when Pyro came out, everyone's like, "Oh, cool! This is Tarkov in space. I'm glad people like it." But like, you know, what about us that want to just live peaceful lives and be a simulator?
Mm-hmm.
That's also like a really interesting thing that Star Citizen does. Like even at its base level now, it's like you think about. It's like now they kind of have hunting, you know, it's like you could really just like hop on one day, just be like, yeah, I want to hunt some copians or something or sandworms. Yeah. And, you know, that's kind of cool that like you could just play it like that. But then other days you could just hop on and be like, hey, just want to cause some trouble and like throw your character away. And that's kind of cool too, that like you could really bounce around between that role play. But then the universe certainly opens up to like that other aspect of kind of like arena PvP gameplay where it's like, yeah, you go in, you die, and then you respawn, and like that was fun. Let's do something else or let's try it again, you know? Yeah. But other times you're like 6 days in on trading and you're like, oh my God, I'm so rich.
But it's still the depth's just not there yet for simulation. No. I mean, you're talking about it with Bannerlord Eththos, you know, mile wide, inch deep. That's Star Citizen right now.
Yeah, it's the same.
You find all these thick ass outposts, you go explore them, and you find like one chest you can loot and 50 you can sit on. I mean, like why?
I think I agree, and I think like I mean that's something that Star Citizen definitely has a problem with. That's why I think the three things that I talked about are so important, right? Even for a simulation player, now that I'm kind of like I'm sort of like processing this live, you know, where like if you want to just be a fisherman, right? The color of the world is all these things that are happening around you too, right? That add that depth, right? You're happy to just fish over and over. You like that mini game, right? But like, you know, maybe you're at a pond and someone shows up and he's like an outlaw who's running away, right? And you have a conversation with him about, you know, what the heck is going on, or like get away from my pond, or like, you know, every once in a while there's a little action. But, you know, that just adds a little color that we need, I think, to make it the universe sim that we want, right?
We all want that.
Like, you know, everyone's just going to their, you know, miners go to the mining place, fishers go to the fishing place, right? Everyone just goes where they need to go, and they're all in different locations. If you want to run combat zones and do PvP, you meet the other PvP players. But some features that bridge that, I think, would be great, where there's a mix, so you're meeting unique people and interesting characters, and different things are happening even among your simulation. So,
oh yeah, man! Microsoft Flight Simulator players, dude, they welcome the storm. Like they want a reason to test their skills.
Yeah,
like that's what we'd like. If we're just doing normal routes, yeah, sure, we love it. But if I'm doing passenger transport and somebody comes up and wants to attack it, you know, you get over the intercom, and be like, all right, it's going to be a bumpy ride, but I'll get you there, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You look forward to that.
Absolutely.
Like you're happy with the calm and you're ecstatic with the highs. You know.
Yeah.
I think that is a fantastic note to end on, gentlemen. I think this has been a very good conversation. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here, just kind of our basic thoughts on Star Citizen. I knew that if I got all of you people together, we'd have a lot to talk about, and I'm glad I did this. For the listeners out there, please be sure to like and subscribe, and any thoughts that you have on the discussion we've kind of covered today, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And with that, we will see you later, hopefully for another episode. Thanks for watching.